Hello and welcome to our lockdown mini-series, Critics and Cars Staying Home.
Today we're very excited to share with you a film that you will have heard of and many of you will have seen. And I should just say that because lockdown's on, we're probably doing a little more viewing than we used to, but we're also seeing a lot of older fare. And today...
Basic Instinct.
Right.
Who hadn't seen it? This guy.
Who had totally seen it at least once, but still couldn't remember who the actual baddie was. This guy.
And to be fair, there is some ambiguity about that, but first of all, I should say we rented this on Academy On Demand, so the Academy of Cinemas has a rental site, and I noticed recently that one of their managers had slugged this as one of their favorite films, and it was available there, and we'd been meaning to catch up with it for a while anyway, partially because we're just working our way through the 90s, and...
You'd be surprised, this chap, right, who gets to go on the radio talking about how he's seen almost 6,000 films.
Jealous.
I'm not jealous, I'm just saying, yeah, what an expert. And yet, you'd be surprised, viewers, listeners, watchers, writers, what sort of classics this dude hasn't seen. But we're good now, he's seen Basic Instinct.
And look, I was an elitist guy who's like, oh, it's Joe Esterhaas, and it's...
As in, he's the writer.
Yeah, and it was,
Paul Verhoeven, the director.
Michael Douglas, who was just one of his many slimy roles in a long string. And yes, no, the name didn't detract me. And Sharon Stone, famous for this role, this very revealing role, we could call it.
That's right.
And it just seemed like a cheap sexploitation film that didn't have much going for it.
You mean you thought this before you saw it?
Before I saw it, yes. Yeah. This isn't going to turn into a big revelation where I hate it. I loved it. It was so good.
Oh, gee. Really? Yeah.
Well, no, but look, okay,
yes.
yeah.
No, yes.
The fact that we never really see A-list stars that, exposing themselves like that on camera these days.
I think the problem is
an element that you referenced.
Well, there's that too, but I guess the point is that Sharon Stone back then, and we didn't actually check her age, but my goodness, she's young as. And that was certainly her breakout role. And I feel like nowadays you wouldn't get people exposing themselves quite like that for a breakout role.
Or at all, really. I mean, it's so rare that any stars will, because it was the pre-internet era, right? Nobody had to worry about... it'd just be a bad VHS, somebody taking a Polaroid of it or something and then photocopying it.
Sure.
As opposed to now where it's just like instantly, pixel perfect renditions
It's
of people.
It's a pretty extraordinary film in a lot of ways, right? And I think one thing that's kind of interesting, and I obviously had seen it before, and when I saw it in the 90s, it was hugely, I was about to say informative.
I bet it was informative.
It was sort of informative in a not very practice-oriented sort of way, but my goodness, our minds were blown.
Well, I'm sitting next to a writer, and Sharon Stone's character is a writer, so...
Well, there you go. So it was a mind-blowing film back in the day, but of course, when you watch it now, not only are you quite mindful about I'm not talking about the consensual sex scenes, but I am certainly talking about some of the slightly rougher business that goes on with Michael Douglas, who's just an out-of-control cop or detective. Yeah. I mean, what an ass. As well as, obviously, all of the objectification of all women, and of course, even back then, back in the olden days, 30 years ago, GLAAD?
Gays and Lesbians Against Defamation or something like
Against
that.
Defamation.
Yeah. Although I think there's 2 A's in the title, so...
We're quite rightly sort of up in arms about the depiction of... I was going to say non-linear, I guess, gay characters being serial killers or committing crimes, right? And you certainly watch that now and you think, yeah, you probably really wouldn't get away with this. There's a lot of homophobic slurs and kind of carry on and all that sort of thing. So you do kind of get that sense of, it was titillation at the time, that she has this girlfriend, Roxy, and Michael...
A woman likes a woman and a man. And you can watch the 2021, kids who've grown up who are like 17 and 18 are like, yeah,
big deal,
whatever.
Right? And they would certainly be going, what an ass Michael Douglas is, not what an ass he has, although that too, I have to say, there is a little bit of that.
Okay.
But surprisingly explicit sex without its being full front. Oh, wait, I guess there is some full frontal, isn't there?
Yeah, pretty famous.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
I can't remember if we've seen Michael Douglas, though.
No, we don't. We don't.
But it's, I guess, I mean, the sexual parts of the film aside, I think there's two aspects to it, of course. There's this screenplay, which obviously was such lightning in a bottle that they had to grab it because it is just... The premise is so fundamentally compelling, is that you have this cop investigating this murder that it turns out almost detail for detail resembles this murder that this incredibly smart and beautiful woman wrote in her book. But obviously, if she's so smart, why would she kill someone the exact same way?
So it is very cleverly done, but
Yeah.
and also the fact that by the end of it, and look, this is vaguely spoilery, that I couldn't remember actually whether Jean Tripplehorn's character Beth was the actual murderer or Sharon Stone's Catherine Trammell was the actual murderer. Yeah. And you read something recently that said...
There's an argument that, I guess we're just getting full on spoiler, that the film can actually be both texts simultaneously, so that there's equal evidence for both, and there's actually a line given in a relatively early scene with the psychologist, which says you have two choices, and the film proceeds to construct itself in a way that either of those choices can be a rational reading
right till the very
of
end
the film.
So
and that's partially the genius of Paul Verhoeven in this. I mean, in terms of finding somebody who A, is totally comfortable with salacious and sleazy material, B, unrepentingly entertainment driven. I mean, this would have been post-RoboCop, pre-Starship Troopers, and so it's a little off from his sci-fi arc at that time.
But
I guess also pre-Showgirls as well.
This is the thing, it's an intelligent film.
Yeah.
It isn't just sort of, soft porn or medium porn or wherever the heck it might have fallen in those days. It's actually, it's a really gripping story. It totally kept this dude guessing.
Yeah. It's 2 hours and 18 minutes, and it just flies by.
And it's beautifully made. So the cinematographer is Jan de Bont, who went on to be the director of Speed, among other films.
And we haven't talked about the score by Jerry Goldsmith, which is kind of very indebted to Hitchcock. I mean, this is also set in San Francisco, as is Vertigo, so there seems like there's moments in there. But there's a scene in particular at the end which relies entirely on really precise musical modulations to play with your expectations of what's going to happen and what's not.
Extremely well-crafted film.
It is such incredible score at that moment. And
let's talk performances just briefly. Like, did you think that Sharon was good?
Yeah, I thought she was terrific. She's playing a character
who's ambiguous.
Yeah, and so sometimes the through line between her scenes, like there's one, and it's meant to be. Is it like, are you seeing this person's raw emotion now? Are you seeing somebody who's being really clever by pretending to display raw emotion?
That's right. When is she being manipulative, or is she manipulating us, or is it a double cross? It's pretty layered and tricky.
I went with it. Douglas was great. Tripplehorn, it was great to see her again. And there's so many supporting characters in it as well. His partner Gus, who's chewing the scenery like it's chunks of ham. But it's
his police partner. Yeah, that's right. And then it becomes an all-out thriller.
And they managed to throw in, just spice through enough sort of action-y thriller, horror kind of set pieces in a sort of Hitchcock De Palma kind of way to keep it going. But it never feels as artificial as like a De Palma film does. And sometimes I love that. But if you compare this film to Dressed to Kill, which is set in San Francisco, this film just doesn't feel nearly as theatrical, and it feels much more visceral.
So look, even if we've spoiled it a little bit and you, like me, couldn't remember much about the film, it's totally worth going back to. And if you, like me, sort of remembered there might have been two outcomes and you don't remember what happens, totally worth going back to. And then you'll just have your critical eye on, because it's 2021, not 1991. But basically, Basic Instinct.
If you think you want to see it, trust your instinct. And till the next time we feel like getting out of our house and going into the driveway and recording one of these, we'll see ya.